today I come to you from a slightly different angle because I am starting a project that I'm planning on taking the full year of 2024, which we know how those go. We know that my year-long projects sometimes are not as successful. So if I start to lose steam on this, I may make it more of like a 6-month project and expedite the timeline. But for right now, the plan, also Marple is right here. Say hi. Oh, say I'm just being such a sweet girl. I just want pets and love. Okay, well, maybe this is just gonna be our angle then, because she needs attention. So if this is not going well, I will just make this a 6-month thing instead of a 12-month thing. Oh, thank you. But my goal, the reason I was at this angle, is because this bookshelf behind me is my TBR bookshelf. It's where I keep most of the things that I have not yet read. I do have a little bit of real estate in my bedroom for some TBR stuff, but that's the main shelf. And one of the goals that I set for myself in 2024 was to clear the equivalent of one of those shelves. So I know that there are going to be things coming on and off my TBR all year, but by the end of the year, I would like for one shelf to be free. We'll see how that goes. But one of the ways... Okay. Are you done with pets now? Okay. One of the ways that I'm going to attempt to do this is I thought I would do a little ABC challenge, which is going to be literally just me trying to read a title from my TBR going in alphabetical order. Now, for some of the more tricky letters, I've done a little bit of sleuthing on my TBR. The only letter I'm going to have a little bit of a cheat on is X. And I think I've come up with a suitable substitute, but I think most of these should be no problem. I have plenty to choose from. So anyway, this is me kicking that project off. We're going A, B, C, D, E, F, G, all the way through Z. I think my plan right now is to break this into 2 videos, assuming that this goes for a full year, one of which, the one you're watching now, will go for the first 13 letters, and the second of which will go for the last 13 letters. So nothing too fancy in terms of theming, just me trying to get through 26 books off my TBR and picking a random way to try to do that. So buckle up and let's do this. A is for All Your Twisted Secrets by Diana Urban. I just started this. It's a YA mystery, but it seems like it's going to be very thrilling. So it is a story that gets going right away, which I appreciate, wherein we have multiple high-achieving students who have been brought to this location because they think that they are getting a scholarship from this like city council or whatever. But almost immediately when they sit down to dinner and they open, the cloche, there is a syringe of poison, a bomb, and a note saying that they have an hour to decide which of them they're going to kill. And if they don't kill someone, the bomb will go off. So it's sort of like escape room. Why does somebody want to do it? Can they get out? So far I am into it. Like I said, it gets going right away, which I think is smart. What I think is less smart is that we're now getting flashbacks. No, I don't want to stay in the moment of this exciting thing that's happening. So frankly, if it continues, I may just skip the flashback sections and just read the current timeline because it completely kills the suspense. But when I'm in that suspenseful timeline, so far it's good. So hopefully, like I said, I may make the executive decision to just skip the flashbacks and stay in the present moment, but I'll report back once I finish. Okay, so I did finish up All Your Twisted Secrets by Diana Urban. And, I'm conflicted because if this had not had the flashbacks, I probably would have given this 4 stars. But the flashbacks, the constant flashbacks, just really take the wind out of the sails in terms of the pacing and structure. I feel like, I don't know, I know the book would have been shorter if it hadn't included those things, but that would have been fine. Like, make this a shorter book, maybe protract out some of the tension or the things that are happening in the room, you know, maybe beef that up a little bit. I don't know. I think that the flashbacks here really undercut the otherwise very tense story. So the escape room bit of they're all stuck in this room and there's a ticking time bomb to get out, and they have to pick someone to die, and like all the chaos and wheeling and dealing happening because of that. I thought all of that was really well handled. I do think the ending reads like the editor stepped in and said, "This is for teens." And I'll just leave it there. So I didn't love the ending. So I think I'm going to land on a 3.5 because I think that this was well done in the parts that I was interested in, but I frankly ended up skimming the flashbacks because they were taking me away from what I was interested in, and I didn't feel like we were getting, like, I think the story would have been as effective without them. We could have gotten some more of the, like, info dumpy backstory in real time. So anyway, 3.5, but if you are not as frustrated by a dual timeline, you might like this better than me. So that is A. B is for Being Mortal by Atul Gawande. This is a book that is about, like, it's from a surgeon. Well, actually, okay, I'll just read you the little blurb. From surgeon and best-selling author Atul Gawande, a book that has the potential to change medicine and lives. Through eye-opening research and gripping stories of his own patients and family, Gawande reveals the suffering that this dynamic creates, this being, I skipped a little bit, but this being basically that medicine can greatly draw out the end of life. So Gawande reveals the suffering that this dynamic has produced. Nursing homes devoted above all to safety battle with residents over food they're allowed to eat and their choices they're allowed to make. Doctors uncomfortable discussing patients' anxieties about death fall back on false hopes and treatments that are actually shortening lives instead of improving them, and families just go along with it. So he is basically, so I've only read the introduction so far, but like what he's kind of like wrestling with here is just because we have science that can extend life doesn't necessarily mean that you should extend life. And I think that I'm excited. Well, this is going to be a hard read, I'm sure, and quite a tone shift from a YA mystery to this. But I think I'm excited to engage with this. This is like ideas that I've wrestled with a lot in the death of my own father, and that he was wrestling with at the end of his life. We had a lot of conversations about this, about like what kind of quality of life he wanted to have, and like, you know, DNR stuff and all of that. And, you know, when the moment comes, it is very difficult, but it is much easier if you are confident that you know what that person wants. So we had a lot of really good conversations. I'm really glad we had, and I am interested. This is a topic I've dealt with in real life, and I'm interested to hear a doctor's perspective on this. And also just like, I don't know, I think it is healthy for us to confront like, my dad always used to say there's two kinds of people in the world: people who say if I die and people who say when I die. Like, I think confronting the fact that we are all going to die, I think is a lot of what this book is talking about. Of, hey, like, to what extent are we just like kind of coddling people while they're processing the fact that they are not going to outlive something? And maybe that's good if it like gives them time to process it, but in some cases are we just like, they're never actually confronting it and then they're just extending suffering? Like, I think that's the kinds of conversations we're gonna have. Okay, finished Being Mortal, and this was really good. Not surprising, because this was a big book when it came out and got lots of awards, I feel like. Yeah, best book for Canada, New York Times Review Book of the Year. So there you go. Yeah, it was really good. It's very approachable, talking about what is intrinsically a very heavy topic. He covers a lot of ground in this about like assisted living and like advanced directives and like what life-saving measures really look like, and hospice, and he covers a lot of ground, but he does it through a lot of anecdotes. So like a lot of like stories from his own life. So he talks about his own dad. He talks about his wife's grandma. He makes it very personal and relatable through those stories. So I don't know. I feel like this is a really approachable and good entry if you have never spent some time contemplating your immortality. I think that this could be a good and very accessible entry point, maybe in conjunction with Caitlin Doughty and some of her books and also her YouTube channel, Ask a Mortician. So, recommended, 4 stars. I can't tell you about the audio because I didn't listen to it on audio, but this was very good. Now, moving on, C is for Chain Gang All-Stars, which is by Nana Kawami Adije Brenna, and I'm trying to reserve judgment. So I'm about 40 pages in. My initial impressions are that this feels a little on the nose. So the setup is that it's a dystopian future where prisoners are kind of in this like reality competition show to kill each other, and there are 2 all-stars who I believe are in love or are gonna fall in love. So there you go. So far, it's very heavy-handed in its world building and the metaphorical critiques it's making of our own real life world via this fantasy or sci-fi world. So I'm hoping we dial down that a little bit and get a little bit more grounded in the characters, but I'm trying to reserve judgment because I really like the ideas, and I'm hoping that those will start translating a little bit more into the story. So this is C, and we're off to sort of a ambivalent start. And we're done. Guys, this is kind of a disappointment to me, I'm not gonna lie. This was a pretty anticipated book for me last year. I really like the concept of this in terms of confronting systems of oppression that are not just oppression for oppression's sake, they're oppression for profit. And that most systems of oppression are for profit. They're not just mustache twirling villains. They are very specifically motivated to be set up the way that they are. You know, I think that there's some there's a lot of interesting conversations in here. Like, I totally see why this was picked for a book club pick, because I think there's a lot of things you could talk about with this. It's very violent, very graphic, but purposely so. I believe, so there's footnotes throughout, some of which I think are telling you about fake history, but other things I believe are true history about the course of different pieces of legislation for the prison system, etc. So I think that's an interesting layer. Like, the themes in this really work for me. I think, though, that this just fell kind of flat. It just felt very on the nose. Like, I don't feel like there was a ton of subtext, and I also didn't feel like plot and characters, because it's such an idea-focused book, the plot and characters felt very secondary to me, and therefore kind of underdeveloped. There's also sort of like a twist thing that happens towards the end, which I can kind of see the justification for, but also felt sort of like, oh, I gotta figure out how to land this plane. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think not a bad book. I would read more from the author. I think particularly I would read some like short stories or novellas from this author, because I wonder, those, when they're very idea forward, tend to work a little bit better for me than full novels. So I don't know, but I would read more from the author, but I would say this is not a favorite, and it's fine. I would give it 3 stars. I do, like I said, I can see why, for like book club purposes, this would have a lot of things to discuss in it. So for that, you know, you may want to think about it. Moving onwards, D is for The Duke Who Didn't, and I'm barely into it, but I already felt like I could give you just my initial impression, which is, God, I'm so happy to be back with Courtney Milan. It's been a hot minute since I've read a new Courtney Milan book. I reread A Kiss for Midwinter every year at Christmas, but I just really love the way she does her historicals. They're more serious, kind of like a little higher angst than I would typically go for, but I think she just handles kind of like social issues in historical romance in a way that really just works for me and resonates. And this is already so adorable. We have a duke in disguise We have a heroine who's obsessed with lists, which is relatable to my Virgo moon. Banter is bantering. I'm already having a great time, so I am very hopeful that this is going to be a hit. And I've had this on my TBR for like 4 years, I think. I want to say this came out in 2019, 2020. Yeah, 2020. So I'm very excited to finally having a reason to pick it up, which is the whole point of this entire project. Howdy. It's been a couple months, I think, but I did finally finish The Duke Who Didn't by Courtney Milan, which was an absolute delight and a half. It was just lovely because Courtney Milan is one of my favorite writers, like the actual prose of her work. She is one of my favorites in romance. She goes for a very high emotive or sort of like angsty tone or like angsty themes a lot of times in her works, which is just not, it's not my favorite. It's one of those things that she's so good, she makes me like it, but it's not my kind of natural, what I gravitate to in romance, especially in historical romance. And this was sort of a lower angst version of what she does, so it just was so wonderful. I was smiling the whole time, giggling and kicking my feet. They just had, our two main characters just have great rapport, like they have great banter and great chemistry. The stakes, you know, they're meaningful, but they're not too high. And I don't know, I just really like the plot. This was great. I gave this 4.5. I don't know that it's an all-time favorite, but it's definitely a favorite of the year, like for sure. So yeah, so this was great. So he was our biggest success so far. E is For Everyone on This Train is a Suspect by Benjamin Stevenson, which is a new release at the time I am filming this, and so I'm very proud of myself for not letting this linger on my physical TBR. And it is a follow-up to Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone, which I enjoyed, though I did have some problems with the writing in that one. Like, that wasn't necessarily my favorite, but the kind of metatextual quality of that book is so my thing, so up my alley. So I still gave it 4. This so far I'm liking even better. Now, granted, I'm not that far in, but it has like a multimedia component to it. And this one is playing on the Murder on the Orient Express type trope where everybody is on a train, someone dies, who done it. So this one is a, you know, closed circle, isolated mystery, which is definitely my thing. And it's a bunch of mystery writers, so it definitely still has that sort of metatextual quality. And I'm just having fun so far. So not very far in, but high hopes that this is going to be another big success. Delighted to report we've got a second 4.5 star in a row, which is just like great energy for this project. Yeah, I gave the first book in this series 4 stars, mostly because I had some issues with the writing. I found that it was a little bit like clunky or choppy. Yeah, I'm not quite sure how to describe what I found to be just a little bit off in the writing, but this, maybe because it's a little shorter, and like a little bit more tightly plotted, I didn't have those problems with it. So 4.5 stars. I just thought this was so fun. It is a trope I love. It's kind of a play on Murder on the Orient Express. But it has that same meta quality that the first book did because it is a bunch of writers who are on this train, like mystery writers, who are on this train, like, and it's sort of like a conference thing with, you know, fans there asking them questions, and different kinds of writers who have been invited, as it shows on the back: the debut writer, the forensic science writer, the blockbuster writer, the legal thriller writer, the literary writer, and the psychological suspense writer. So yeah, we get Ernest again. He's our main character, and there's some fun metatextual things that I can't get into because I think you should just enjoy them for yourself. I particularly liked the ending, and yeah, this was just a success all around. So 4.5 stars here, and I'm glad I didn't let it linger on my TBR for years at a time, the way that I did for our F book. F is for 5 Survive by Holly Jackson. And this is not going well. And, yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm gonna DNF this. I am only on page 30, so I need to give it another 20 to 30 pages to be sure. But This, it's like the sentences are all words and theoretically they make sense together, but I have no idea what she's saying and like what she's talking about. I don't know. It's bizarre. So it's a group of teenagers who are going on an RV, like spring break trip from somewhere in the Northeast to like Florida, I think. Anyway, they're in this RV and I'm pretty sure they're going to get stranded and something bad is going to happen to them. But right now I literally don't understand the sentences that are on the page, which is hampering my enjoyment. So I'll try to like really focus for 20 to 30 pages to see if I just was distracted, but things are going to have to really turn around for me to finish this. So from a great high to a great low, we'll see what happens. But right now it ain't looking good. Okay, I didn't even bother going to grab 5 Survive. It's in my DNF pile that I need to take to the bookstore. I don't know if it's me, I don't know if it's the book, but what I think is happening is it's going for purposeful disorientation and just failing at it. I don't know. I thought it was pretty bad and I'm not gonna keep reading it. So that was a flop. F was a flop. G, though, is for The Groves of Academe by Mary McCarthy, which is a book that I've been trying to read for probably 15 years. This has been on my TBR for a very long time. I've owned it for more than 10 years. And so far I'm really enjoying it. So it is a satire of academic life written in the like early 50s, I think like 51. And it is skewering the sort of like hollow version of progressivism that is found in these sort of like elite moneyed institutions. I kind of wish so I'm on page like 40ish. I've read 2 chapters. I kind of wish the first chapter, which is this modern English professor getting a letter that he's going to be let go, I kind of wish that had been its own short story. Like, and that was it. Because I don't know where this book is going to go from there, but he, I believe, is going to start thinking that there's some sort of like conspiracy of why he's being let go. Yeah, I don't know. It's very interesting and thought-provoking, and the writing is yummy. Like, it's just a delight to read. So I'm excited to make more progress, but this is gonna be a sipper. I'm not gonna try to just like bolt through this one. I'm gonna kind of take it a couple chapters at a time. So yeah, I'm enjoying this one much better than 5 Survive. So far G is much more successful. Okay, it's been probably about 10 days since we last spoke, and I finished The Groves of Academe by Mary McCarthy. Great, this is really good. Well, great might be too strong. This was really good. It is very funny, so well observed. I will say this kind of feels like a fictional vehicle for McCarthy. I almost said McCarthyisms, McCarthyism is a very big part of the plot, but the witticisms of Mary McCarthy. Like, it's a lot of her observations of the world and sort of like critiques of the left, of like the left eating its own, which is like an age-old thing. Just like the bullshit politics and her commentary on it. I don't know. It's very well written. Like, the writing it's overwritten, but in a way that feels very controlled and is very hard to do well. Most people who are overwriting think they're doing this and are actually just like not as proficient of word craftsmen as they think themselves to be. She's actually that good. And it's sort of like a love child of Stoner by John Williams and Penin by Nabokov. Like, it's kind of between those two, because I'd say it's a little more grounded in terms of a plot than Penin, but it's definitely way like more observational and like witty and kind of like incisive than Stoner is trying to be. Like, it's a different project than what Stoner is. So if those comparisons appeal to you, I would definitely recommend this. I'm going to give this 4 stars. Like, I think that if this had been a novella, it would have been great. Like, if it had been pared down to like the essence, I think this would be 5 stars. But it's a little bloated in places, like, I don't know. Anyway, I'm glad that I finally read this. This has been on my TBR for a very long time. So enjoyed, 4 stars, not like an all-time favorite, but I'm gonna keep it if that says anything. So, and then H is for Her Majesty's Royal Coven by Juno Dawson, which I have been trying to get to for so long. I keep like putting it on TBRs and then not reading it. So now is finally the time. And I'm only a couple chapters in, but I'm really enjoying so far. We are getting a bunch of different POVs from these 5 members of this coven, and we meet them when they're little girls about to take their coven oath. And then I think we're like catching up with them 25 years later in their adult life. And it's very, like, the writing I'm really enjoying, the voice, the characters, like, all that's good. It already made me kind of tear up a little bit. Now, granted, it was like the death of a beloved old horse that had, you know, its time had come. So it's not like, it's not hard to pull at my heartstrings with that. But yeah, so far I'm interested. The premise is sort of like a secret society kind of thing. And like Her Majesty's Royal Coven, like as implied, working for the British government on like supernaturally things. The comp I'm hoping this is similar to is The Rook, which is one of my all-time favorite books. So I'm hoping that this will give me that. It's going to be a different plot, but in terms of sort of the kind of fantasy story this is, that is what I'm very much hoping this is. So yeah, I'm cautiously very excited. So wish me luck. We're done with H, but I've made even more progress. So Her Majesty's Royal Coven, I'm going to give this a 4-star. So this is urban fantasy, and thematically, I think I already told you guys kind of the setup or premise. Thematically, this is a lot about, like, the book this reminds me of is Tell Me I'm Worthless by Alison Rumfitt, because it's a lot about fascism and transphobia. So, thematically great. I will say that the writing, it's not bad writing, but it reads, like, it rings in my ears slightly off, which kept me from fully being immersed, fully loving this, you know, like to the level of a 4.5 or a 5, but this is definitely a 4-star. I really enjoyed the different points of view we had. Far and away my favorite was Neve, and what was going on. I mean, maybe because there's like a little bit of a romance happening, but also just her journey with Theo, and kind of her role as like a teacher. I just really loved Neve. And so yeah, this had some twists and turns in it. Pacing, I would say the other thing that I would knock it on a little bit is pacing. The first bit is a little slower than the second half, but the second half is just like a downhill, like, ride. So yes, I would give this 4 stars. I liked this so much, in fact, I dove straight because it ends on a cliffhanger. Like, holy shit, Batman, what a cliffhanger. So I dove right into the Shadow Cabinet. I had a copy of this already because I was putting in a Waterstones order and they had like some slightly damaged copies, and this was like, I think £7. So I knew that if I loved this series and wanted the full trilogy, I was going to want it in this edition, so I went ahead and grabbed it. So I made it to page 97, and the magic is gone. I mean, I don't mean that as a pun because it's a magical book, but there's something in the, like, what was a little off in this book feels really off in this one. And then I can't get into why, but like the things I was invested in from the first book haven't been present. And so then I skip to the end, because sometimes I'll do that if I'm not feeling it. And I think it's still not present. So I'm going to actually DNF this for now. It's a soft DNF because I want to hear from people. Like, I basically want to hear what happens in the finale and if the thing that I'm invested in comes back up. So weird, yeah. But for the actual book for this project, this was a 4-star. This was a big success. As a whole, this is kind of a weird situation we're in. So that was H. And then I is for In the Bleak Midwinter by Julia Spencer Fleming. Now, one thing that's funny about this is I would have bet big money that this was set in the UK, but it is not. It's set in New England, which actually made sense once I thought about it, because I was like, oh yeah, she's supposed to be an Episcopalian priest, like, duh. This is so well written, so I've actually finished this. I did not check in and then keep going. I flew through. This is so good in terms of its quality. It's very well written. I can totally see why it's award-winning and why it has been very hyped. The vibes of this are what I thought I was going to get from the Louise Penny series, Still Life. This reads as a first novel in that kind of small town, Midsummer Murders, but in North America. That vibe. This is much more that. Reverend Claire is like a new priest in town at the local Episcopalian church. There's some controversy because she's a lady priest, and one night a baby is left on the doorsteps of the rectory, and she brings it in, and she meets this police officer named Russ, who she has a very interesting dynamic with throughout the novel. And pretty quickly they find a body in relation to the baby that was left, and because of kind of like the nature of the dynamics, Claire ends up getting really involved in the investigation, so her and Russ are kind of working together. So he's the chief of police. I think he's the chief. Yeah, chief of police. And then she's the local priest. So the writing is great. The mystery I thought was really good too, actually. Like, it's a really good small town mystery. I thought it, just because of some of the dynamics it introduced about like a lady priest and what have you. There was themes I was interested in terms of like gender, religion, all that. So if there is, again, I'm trying not to spoil things in these two different reading experiences that I'm recapping for you. There's an element that is introduced in this book that is like top 5 least favorite things I like to read about in a book. And I was aware that that became an element of this series at some point, but it is introduced in the first book. And for that reason, I don't think I'm going to read this whole series through, because I just don't like to read about that. So, your mileage may vary, and I don't want to spoil it for you. So it's hard for me to really warn you, but I'll just say there's something in this that I don't like to read about, and I'll leave it at that. If you know this series and or some of the things I don't like to read about, you might be able to guess. But I would say that will not be off-putting for everyone. Most people probably would be fine with it. So I would still recommend the series. It's very well written. And if you like murder mystery, police procedural, small town with kind of a twist because of who the characters are, I would definitely recommend this. So that, I would give this 4 stars. So I'm actually realizing that we're about almost exactly a third of the way in. I think I'm gonna actually break this into 3 videos instead of 2, because it's a lot of books in one video already. Also, because I know it might be kind of hard for you guys to tell, but that top shelf is all just like knitting paraphernalia now instead of books. So we're already making great progress on my goal, but we have to keep our nose to the grindstone so that we continue with that progress for the full year. And I am loving this project. This is like an ideal project because it's just the right amount of structure to then mood read, because the prompt of just the letter, most letters, is very broad. Like, there's a few really only have 1 or 2 options, but most of them I have several options, and so I get to just mood read, but also still like be doing what I'm supposed to be doing. What a dream. So I am loving this. I still love it this much by the end of the year. I might just make this like an ongoing series because it is, just very, this has been like one of my favorite projects I've set myself so far this year. So yeah, so we're about a third of the way through. We'll start the next video with J. I already think I know what J stands for, but I need to, whenever the day comes that I'm going to read the book, we'll decide if that is what I'm actually in the mood for. But yeah, let me know what you thought about any of the books I talked about. I think I gave a ton of 3.5 and 4 stars out. Again, if you can't tell from these TBR read down videos, turns out if you read books that you yourself chose for yourself based on your tastes and not just being influenced, you read a lot of things you like. So, yeah, not a revolutionary concept, but apparently one I needed to relearn. So anyway, let me know what you thought about any of the books I talked about. And yeah, I hope you guys are having a good one. If you like the video, like it, subscribe, hit the bell if you want to, all that good stuff. Theoretically, you can find me on social media, but not really. Honestly, these days, you can mostly find me on Goodreads and Ravelry for the most part. But yeah, I hope you guys are doing great, and I will just talk to you soon. Bye!